Hey there. Good day to you all. This is Sam. We are mid-morning here on December 28th and had a member interested in having a look at NEO. So I've got NEO to Bitcoin up here on Bittrex. And, fortunately, I've already got my work done here. So let me just show you a few things here. So, of course, the most striking thing is working from this low here with these first two pivots. You can see how this median line has just continued and the parallels have continued to track the market. And we culminate here with just a perfect wick of the median line here at what potentially may be the completion of this five-wave sequence. We do get this uncharacteristically shallow C wave here for the fourth, which we just see all over crypto. I've probably mentioned it, more than a dozen times, that this is this unusual thing that we're seeing in crypto where we're getting shallow C waves to give us these triangle patterns into the fourth. But you also note here, to support that, we have the lower parallel, and we went right into the pocket of the Vegas wave. So you have a lot of evidence to suggest there that we have now a complete five-wave sequence. We've got beautiful subdivision here into our third. Then we get the ABC, we get a three-wave, and you can see the five waves into the A wave that bring it right down to the 38.2. So we get the statistically relevant stop area support zone, I should say, for our fourth. Even though we get it, then we see the little three wave into the B, and we come down. Here's our shallow C, and then up we go to pop the median line. So if we operate on the assumption that we have a completed five wave here, now one thing I always think it's good to do. So when you look at that chart, you think to yourself, "Wow, this thing is really, really, ripped off the low here," and certainly percentage-wise, that's absolutely true. But if we zoom out a bit and you get some perspective on this, which is always a good thing to do, you can see where we are relative to where we've been. You see that? So, I mean, we're just getting started, and I think I've done this chart before. You can see here, so we went right to the 50, wicked it, and then we're a little shy of making that algo target there. But as I recall, this was technical as well. Yeah, there it is. So we got this 50, and then we go to just a couple of ticks for a front run on the algo profit target. So very technical trading is not surprising. This is a major coin. So you can do things like this that are always good to do when it's just staring you in the face. So there you get that nice channel that we're just now starting to break. First signs of breaking out of that. Wouldn't surprise me that we're going to retrace down here. And I mean, you can see if we've got a five-wave sequence, so this would be the start, the one wave, potentially, of a new trend. Now, we've had it before. You can see we had a potential for it here. Maybe this is something different here, and we're going to start a new trend. But a lot of upside, I guess, is my broader point, if we're going to go up and challenge those highs, as to where we may be going. So let's break it down a little bit and see where the next opportunity to get long, on the assumption that we have now signs of sustainability outside of this channel. So let me take that off. And let's go back down to the 1 hour and get a handle on it. So again, now as we look at it, it gets a little more context. So if that's complete, and we are operating on the premise that it is, supported by the wick of the median line to suggest that, so Andrew's median line trading principle number 2, very often you will see a pivot made, a significant pivot made at or on the median line, and that's exactly what we get here. Now, it's subject to being relabeled. We could see a relabeling here. This potentially that we could end up with this. Well, sorry, not that. We could end up with a more complex correction here. So we might, if I just show you the potential relabeling here, because you could make the case that we have a three wave here. So we'd have an expanded flat. So this would be our A wave, an A, B, C into a B, and then down for the C. That may play just as well. So how do we know? Well, we're of course we're going to have to deal with some resistance here. So this will be part of that tell. So this potentially is an alternate count. So that's just the reality of this methodology here. So we have a rule set, but we're not locked into anything in that you have to be flexible to relabel as long as you stay within the rules and guidelines of the Elliott theory. So there's nothing that says that this must be the fifth. So this certainly could play as the B wave, and then this down into our C, and then we would essentially have a double bottom here at the 38. So it's hard to be definitive. Well, you can't be definitive about it. You really can't. I mean, this is just as valid as the count that I had initially. So how do we know? Well, we've got to look at where we're likely to run into some resistance. So between the 50 and the 618, that's likely resistance coming back up. And you can see here, if I open that up a little bit more, do we have a 5-wave? Well, you could make the case that we may be trying to put in a diagonal here. We've already overlapped a potential 1, so there's a case to be made that we're now starting in this. Let me make that a little easier to see. Let me get that in green, and let me take the degree up so you can see it. So you could make that case that you've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come up here, and it would be nice to challenge that high and run right into that resistance at the 618. That wouldn't surprise me. That this still plays perfectly well. You could have a diagonal into the 1 wave coming out of this to go up and get a more traditional fifth up here. And to some degree, that symmetry plays a little bit better relative to this because of this 5-wave. And you can see, this is the point I was making earlier, you can see how we get an A, B, C here. So that potentially plays, and there's actually good subdivision here into we get a 1, 2, 3, 4, slight overlap there, so we'd have an ending diagonal. So that's just as valid. So there's no way to be really definitive about it until we see what shapes up here. So do we come into this? So potentially, all of it leans towards higher prices. It's just a question of where can we find an entry with the kind of risk-reward parameters that we look for, right? On the assumption that most of the time you're going to be wrong. So if we're wrong, where do we know we're wrong? Well, if we're operating it for this as a 1-wave to finish the 5th up here, okay, which certainly possible. So if that's a 1, so let me mark this off. So we know this resistance is here. So we're definitely going to run into some resistance right there. So if having that marked, if we operate on the assumption that that's a 1-wave, a leading diagonal taking us out of this pivot down here. So then let's just for the sake of the example here, if we work from low to high with a leading diagonal, then our next entry for a long is down here between the 50 and the 618 on the other side. Now, too soon to do it yet because we don't have, we can't be definitive about this completing that diagonal. I would like to see it come up here, and we have that resistance where we know we're likely to experience some resistance getting through it just from algo action. Now, if they blow through that, then we can start to look at this a little bit differently. That adds credibility to the potential of this being our 1-wave. And yet again, if we get through that resistance, then it's just a matter of waiting until we get a pivot up here and then looking for the next entry between the 50 and the 618, because now we'd be entering on the assumption that we would be putting in a 2-wave for the potential of that 2 to take us up to this 5th. You see that? Right, so either one of these plays. So the question is, what happens at this resistance? Do we blow through it, giving credence to the idea that we've got a 1-wave and our entry is for the 2 to complete the 5th, or do we come up and hit it and then start heading down? So we might look like this. So we wait for that. We wait for that. And then look for this to hold. If that holds and then we start again, then we can again get more confidence in this count. Right now, there's no real way to be definitive about it. The market has to give you a little more information to reveal itself. So I would be cautiously looking for longs here. We're again, you got to understand that if indeed we have already topped, right? So what's the downside? So if you look here at the entry, the potential risk reward. So let's say we're at the 50. We've got here's our target down here. We're entering at the 50. Stop on the other side of the 786. Here's our upside target here. There's the algo pull up here for this fifth. So what do we get there? There's 4.8 to 1. And you could probably tighten this up even more as a potential second just on the other side of the 786. So there's almost 6 to 1. So, for me, I'll take 6 to 1 any day. I have no problem. I can look at that and say, well, if I'm wrong, again, that's not going to knock me out. That's just a jab. I can take a jab, and I might even look to re-enter again. But I'll take the 6 to 1. Now, if indeed this is our fifth, right? Because we have two scenarios. So if it ends up that this is our fifth, right, with the pivot here on the median line, implying that potentially we've capped this 5-wave sequence, well, then we're looking at this differently. Well, then we have potentially this is our A wave. So I'll put this back to the way it was before. So if that's the case, then this becomes potentially our A wave here. So I got to put the whole thing back. So there's our B. Here, we'll take that off. So we get A, B. So we get A, B, C, right? So there's the other count, the alternate, right? And I always suggest it's a good idea to have both. Keep them side by side so you can see which one plays so you're ready to respond to what the market is showing you. If this is our A wave and we're putting in a B and we're going to head back down, well, then the next entry zone is down here at the 50. Or somewhere in this zone, because now we're operating on the assumption that we have a completed one wave and we're playing for this. So now that is the other scenario, which is where we started, that this is our 1, we'd be going down for a 2, 3, 4, 5. We put that in white and take up the degree so you get the idea. So let's go to intermediate so you can see it. So if this is our one-wave top, okay, if that's the case. Now, the reason I'm a little suspect of that as the fifth is look at the symmetry. Look at the size of the third wave relative to the fifth. Right now, it's not too far from the first, so you'd want to look at that. So here, this is when you're trying to get a handle on where the fifth could be topping. We want to look at the relationship from the one wave in length to potentially what we have as our fourth. So let me pull that over so you can see that. So that adds some credence to it because this is a very common zone for a fifth to be 100% of the length of the one. So this is very valid. It's consistent with typical Elliott fib relationships from wave to wave. So we have that potential there for this to be the one wave. So how do we know? Well, then we're looking for an ABC. We're looking for this to be our A wave, this to be our B wave, and this to be our C wave. Let me put it in yellow, take up the degree so you get the idea. So let's go to minuet. Okay, so there we go. So do you see that? So we have two scenarios here. One is that we've just done an expanded flat into a B wave. The other, based off of this evidence here, that we have the 100% the length of the one, that we have the median line, that we potentially have a 5-wave structure to complete an ending diagonal into our fifth. So it's kind of the tell is here. Right? Do we blow through it, sustaining the idea and substantiating the idea that I have a 5-wave sequence coming up here? Do I end up with a 3-wave and we're back down for an A, B, C? So here's the longer term buy. If we get it, that would be a gift in my view. That's a gift. If you're playing up here, well, you're playing on a smaller scale because now you're playing for a 1-2 with a much tighter stop. So longer term, this is where this would be a great opportunity if we could see it, but we may not see it. Right? We may still be completing this. So you have to stay flexible to what the market offers you, and you look for tells. So right now, this is looking more and more like a 5-wave if we blow up in here. Again, this potentially plays as our B. We got to see what happens. Do we go up and challenge that? So it's tricky, right? So if this was easy, right, we'd all be rich. So this is not easy. So now it's a matter of analyzing the market. This is all you can do as a technician. Is there a tell here that I can operate from? And if this starts heading lower, well then I'm sitting, with open arms waiting for this. I mean that would be a gift if we head back down there. This, it's kind of a wait and see. It's a much smaller trade. This is one that you buy and you can be a little bit more aggressive here because now the upside is enormous. So here's your first target here. If that's a 1-2, and then knowing that, right? Knowing that if that were a 1-2 and thinking about where we've been, just for the example. So if this, now you put it in context, if this is 1 and this is our 2, well, here's 100% up here. Don't need those just yet. Here's 100% up here. So this would be the minimum target for a third. It would have to be in X. We'd have to at least equal the distance of the one wave. But your larger target is way, way, way up here. Right? So this is why I say here, this is a gift if we get it. If we get the opportunity to buy it down here. Right? Stop under the 65. So it's just the degree of the trade. It's a much larger trade you're looking at here to try and catch that for a third. Here, ultimately, even if this, we're still looking for the 2. It's just a question of where we find the 2. Where's the end of the one wave? Is it here? Or are we going back up to finish that yet again? And then we're waiting for the 2. So all of it is looking for the 2 to try and catch the big move up here. If this is going to indeed be a real trend that is starting, that is getting us out of that long downtrend that we've been in for a long time. Just to take you back to put it in perspective. Right? Are we going up? So now look at that. Right? So here you're just getting back to these prior highs. Right? This is now you're talking about a whole new ball game. Right? So keep some perspective on this. We're trying to. This would be a home run ball here from this here, and all we're doing is getting back to prior resistance. All right? I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'll wrap it there, guys.